Hello, folks. Welcome to another live stream poetry. Tonight's readers are George Corbin, Kimberly McNeil, Sarah Degner, Riveros, and David Wright. I will, of course, read two poems first, like I always do. But before we get started, I've just learned that poet Mimi Jennings has passed away. If we could have a moment of silence for her, that would be wonderful. Now, my dog behind me can't be silent for a whole minute. Mimi will be missed. She was a wonderful poet around the Twin Cities, full of energy. To start, I'll read a couple poems. This first poem is from a series of poems that I wrote that were kind of quirky. They were called How to, Like a Philosopher, Think Deeply. And this one is Lesson 5, The Afterlife. You may have heard stories of what lies in the afterlife, as well as what is truthful. Some have found reunions and the energy of the mind far beyond the pleasures of the body. Mind power would make sense to a philosopher, the poet not so sure. Some have found more than they could comprehend, and our common reality hard to face from that point forward. To contemplate deeply, to walk steadily, some needed the use of a third eye. There are tales of other encounters, of shadows, of systems, of belief. To ponder this correctly, you must accept the stories, not offered as a resting place, but a glimpse of a deeper truth. You may ask if this tactile reality is so common, or is the perception a variant for all who wonder? A philosopher may agree with the poet. Sometimes the questions are more useful than the answers. This next poem originally was one of those. It's now called The Nature of Wisdom, and it appears in my collection Dog, which is, by the way, still available at Amazon for a nice price. The Nature of Wisdom. A dog in a strange house has to go on the patio, not seeing the window door there. Dumb dog, one may say, but isn't it a matter of perception? A dog's perception differs from yours. I heard a quote once that God's wisdom is not the wisdom of this earth. A philosopher would ask, is perception intelligence? Is wise knowing what is outside, what is inside? To think deeply, you must question the width of your own wisdom. Hearing what my brother said, I looked at Becca as she turns away from the door. The only thing to do is to get up, open the door, knowing she won't jump from the patio. And fortunately, she didn't pee. Our first reader tonight is George Colburn. He is an award-winning poet and a lifelong resident of St. Paul, Minnesota. He was awarded the Veterans Voice Award in 2019 from the Minnesota Humanities Commission, the Order of Shakespeare Medal from the Motivational Stripes, has published 4 books, Payday, A Punctuated Echo, Milking the Dragon, and An Undeclared War, Poetry Born in Vietnam, and has published in numerous poetry anthologies and literary magazines, including the latest Witness Writers Anthology 2022 and the Itasca Community College Spring Thaw Literary Magazine. He also reads his poetry at various venues throughout the Twin Cities. As the son of deaf parents, his work is strongly influenced by his experiences, acting as an interpreter for his parents in the larger world and by his exposure to the deaf community. These experiences have engendered in him a love for language, clarity, rhythm, and the craft of writing. Let's hear George.
Well, thank you, Ron. And I want to start by saying thank you to Ron and to Valerie for setting up this event and live stream on Minneapolis Television Network. It's lovely to be here with so many friends and other wonderful poets. The first thing I want to read is a haiku. It's called "The Danger of World Travel." We are all the same. You'll see it all around you. You might take it home. This next one is called "In the Garden, in the Family." Be sure to dig up the good stories. Turn them over in conversations that have already been weeded. Mix each day with new fertile soil. Plant what you really want to grow. Encourage deep and tentacled roots. Give more than enough space to all. The right amount of water and sun. Always remember that after blooming, you won't need to tend them anymore. They can be enjoyed together or separately as varied and exotic fruits. This next one's called "The Anarchist Next Door." Builds bombs in his basement to destroy the oppressors that threaten to poison all the squirrels in his yard. Has guns at the ready and boxes of bullets in store. He's prepared to defend the world from the worldly mob. His church is just static. He tunes on his radio, convinced it will be deciphered before aliens come for us all. He always has beer in the fridge, isn't afraid to howl at the moon, prances naked before the mirror, stares through a telescope world. By day, he's an insurance actuary, skulking in his cubicle all week. On weekends, he's a world defender, waiting for civilization to fall. This next one is called "I Dreamt Water," but there was no water anywhere to be had for quenching thirst, for slaking or taking, in pitchers, in jugs, no water, not even stolen from the sky, no distillation saving us. The Colorado is deathly ill. The Columbia is shrinking. Even the Mississippi sinks. A plan to divert the Great Lakes to California farming is in the works. A theory to harvest Saturn's ice rings and bring them toward our atmosphere is brewing. The desalinization of oceans has already begun. But now I am thirsty and there is no water in the world surrounding me. My lips are parched. My life is dry, hoping only for a wet redemption. This next one is called "Consensus Census." They've been knocking on doors, not selling anything at all, asking about you and yours and subjects large and small, searching for a subtle clue to how you think or how you feel, wondering about the things you do and what you judge as false or real. They've been knocking on doors, not judging, just gathering facts, all about your private metaphors and what deters and what attracts, the things you like to eat or the things you want to wear, when you start to feel the heat and when you just don't care. They've been knocking on doors to get a peek inside your brain, not adding up your scores, not caring if you're sane, just inspecting all your attitudes, reflecting on your proclivities, cross-referencing your moods with their many commercial activities. This next one is one of my absolute favorites. It's called The Best Bread in the World, a poem for occupations. Sometimes I wonder if everything he touches becomes flour. He needs a new bust of Caesar and sells it as pumpernickel. I've seen his powdered studio reek of Picasso cubes and Dali madness. Later, he fills them with creams and jellies, carefully marking a place for their tray in his 6 o'clock window display. This one was made during my Dadaist period. He teaches a half-asleep clerk a tort with fur. Not rousing even a leavening smile, he retreats, believing that genius could never compete with morning, and attacks the sweet rolls with an icing palette, knowing someday he'll write a book without yeast. This next one is kind of fun. It's called The Poetry Helpline. Is open when you need us. Every day of your year is staffed by experienced, empathetic authors and creative writing teaching assistants. We're ready to assist in clearing the mist from your mind. Hello, this is the Poetry Helpline. How may we versify your life today? Oh, I see. Yes, certainly. No, you probably want the pity helpline. That's a completely different exchange. Okay, bye. Thanks for the exclamations. Hello, this is the Poetry Helpline. How may we versify your life today? Yes, that does sound serious, but I think we can show you a path forward. Before we begin, we have a few questions to help us direct your consternation. Have you already written your poem? Is this poem about your mother? Are you having any difficulty with couplets? Are you writing exclusively in rhyme? Who have you shown this poem to and why? Do you read Sylvia Plath? Thank you. Let me put on one of our lyrical experts. Hello, this is the Poetry Helpline. This next one is called The Wolf at My Door. Started out outside a dreamed ice cream store in Sausalito, I think. I had just left and was outside, started walking down the street, and then in my dream, I had to write it down. And suddenly, possessed of pencil and paper, stopped at a random outdoor table with an objectively pretty young woman and her pessimistic friend and scrawled it down. The wolf at my door, as if it was prophetic and had just become objectified. Then walked on as if this were normal for a subjective dream, with the Golden Gate in the background for an objective transmogrification. My mouth still ice cream chilled, and I tasted dream cherries, and I thought they try to become objectified first as a flower, then a seed, then palpable and mute as globed fruit. But my dog's front paws began subjectively itching my still dreaming leg under the covers, which began to objectify my bladder first. Then the day began to be objectified too, and the dream shattered in sunshine. Everything in it had become objectified: cherry, woman, sunshine, but not dog, my leg, bladder, still annoyingly subjective, except for the wolf at my door. which remained stubbornly neither in my dream, through a number 2 pencil that I had dreamed up on this journey to poem. Do I have time for a couple more? I want to read one that I wrote as an offset to William Carlos Williams. But first I'll read this one. It's called Church Ladies Learn to Dance. The movement was as fluid as the Holy Ghost, filling them with grace. They moved their hands in syncopation while keeping a passive, holy face. They swept between the pews and down the aisles and every place, and each would smile when you came to pray, extending God's embrace. The last one I want to read is an offset to a poem that I love by William Carlos Williams called This Is Just to Say. I have eaten the plums that were in the icebox and which you were probably saving for breakfast. Forgive me, they were delicious, so sweet and so cold. And here's my response. No plums for William Carlos Williams. There were no plums in the icebox, although I was sure they were there. I searched the hydrator and beyond and the depths of my mind, but there were no plums in the icebox. The people on the bus on my way home probably wondered what the smile in my eyes meant as I sat anticipating, but there were no plums in the icebox. Their sheen unsurpassed in my mind's eye, opalescent ruby sheen and gentle cleft from stem to stigma, like your sweet rump. But there are no plums in the icebox, and I could not conjure them from the mist as I opened the chilled door. Just an absence I could not let go of. But there were no plums in the icebox for me, selfish me, to madly devour. No juicy drip down my chin to savor as I savor you, so sweet and so cold. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Very enjoyable poems. Is there a number to that poetry hotline?
I'm not giving it out.
I understand. Next up, we have Kimberly McNeil. Kimberly began writing poetry about the same time that she began dopamine therapy for her newly diagnosed Parkinson's disease. She feels that dopamine shows great promise in treating mental health issues, particularly addiction. She's a retired naval officer and physician and resides in Southwest Florida with her husband of 34 years. She strives to write the truth, oftentimes targeting stereotypes and hypocrisy. She lost her only child in 2018, just days before he was to begin college, and has written extensively about his death. So let's hear Kimberly.
Good evening. The first poem I'm going to read, can you hear me okay? The first poem I'm going to read is titled Childless. When my son died, I was devastated by the colossal waste that was his mind, that rare, non-judgmental, creative kind. My flattened affect, mask, belied, a manic hemispheric need to understand his death. When my son died, I became less human, existing anesthetized by my addictions. garish makeup my disguise to confront the accident. His mutilated body, so traumatized, it was beyond recognition. Witnesses whispered suicide at over 100 miles per hour. But his body was never identified before the crematorium took him. Some days I wonder if he's still alive, as I embrace the relief of being childless. End poem. The second poem contains adult themes and language and may not be appropriate for all listeners. It's titled Urges, a monologue for mothers. It's written in the first person, but it is not autobiographical. It is in quotations because it is a monologue. I have been having violent urges lately. Dry, drunk daydreams, which are graphic. Gruesome and vile acts of heinous aggression against innocent citizens simply in the wrong place. Urges to run people over with my car and then shoot them in the face. Urges to burn buildings to the ground. Urges to rape a man that I've beaten unconscious. The most disturbing urge is new and intensifying daily. The urge to run. Abandon my children quickly in an unconscionable silence without an explanation. End poem. The third poem I like to read is a deviation from the way I normally write. It's a nature poem and a love story. And it's titled Cabin, Bird, Tree, Me. I daydream often about you and me, finally colliding and becoming a tree. I the fruit and you the leaves, branches slow dancing in the breeze. We are the fuel that fires bright, cabins warm, amber light. We are the golden falling leaves, spring's new buds, a psychedelic green. Dappled patches of navy shade, where summer birds frolic, build nests, and bathe. Cabin birds perform on a natural stage, high up in our treetops, where they serenade and fill the woods with song. End poem. Can I read one more? Okay. This last poem is titled Dopamine, and that is what we take to treat our Parkinson's disease. And it goes like this. It was as if my life bulb glowed green. My bitch kicked back. I thought I could sing. I stopped sleeping and eating, cachectic heart barely beating. I rode the hard rock bucking mechanical bull's back. An exaggerated, sexless, bacchanalian act. A doorbell ring. My Pavlovian thing with drool-filled shopping boxes. I became a poetess who understood losses. And I began to dream again. Dopaminergic nightmares of drug shortages and strife. Parkinson's without dopamine, frozen in life, like Pompeian statues, buried alive, as an unearthly rigor mortis set in. Thank you.
Thank you, Kimberly. That was very strong work.
Thank you.
I'm going to read a poem by Hazel Hall. Usually I wait till the end of the reading to read a poem by somebody else, but I'm going to do it at this point today. It's called Disputed Tread. Where she steps a whirl, like dust about her feet, follows after her down the dustless street. Something struggles there, the voices that contend, violently as to where her pathway is to end. Issues like great hands, grip and wrestle for her tread. One would strive to trip, and one would go ahead. Conflicting strengths in her, grapple to guide her feet, raising an unclean whir, like dust upon the street. Okay. Our next, excuse me. Our next poet, excuse me 1 second. Must have got some dust from that last poem in my throat. Our next poet is Sarah Degner Riveros. She grew up bilingual in Chicago, Illinois, and Irving, Texas, and earned her doctorate in Spanish literature at Columbia University in New York. She teaches Spanish and studies creative writing at Osborne University in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where she is finishing an MFA in poetry and creative nonfiction. She is a single mother of 5 children. Her work has appeared recently in Sonora Review, Rogue Agent, Vassar Review, Pithead Chapel, Atlantic Review, among others. Let's hear Sarah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this invitation to read. Ron and Valerie, thank you for holding this space for poetry. I'm 4 states away from the man I love, and it's an anniversary. So I would like to read this poem first. Held. Standing on your porch in half light, 12:30 or 1 or 2, but whose clock is looking? You cradle my hip in your hand, an anchor hold for climbing to the stars. You read my bones. I feel the charge of 1,000 eels slither through the blue night air between us. Your hand on my back squeezes gently, repacks the flesh around my heart. You make me fragile once again as you press my sandcastle back together, buying time against the tide. Your lost phone, now back in your pocket, dings. Someone is looking for you. Later, I'll recall being consumed by a prairie of milkweed, cup plant, asters, illumined by occasional headlights. But the world has disappeared into my hip bone in your palm. I can't breathe without you. My kids are across town asleep on a school night with restless dreams. In the kitchen, a glow of autumn night casts shadows around the clock. Your son's out east, your mother north, my mother south, our siblings scattered around the Midwest. But we're held here, two single parents, unlikely homemakers, anchored in time on the threshold. I'm calling in from Indiana, and so I'd like to share a poem about the promises I made to my children who were born here. This poem is called Small Town Indiana. Time moves backwards here. Smoke smells rise from a chimney by the highway as I speed past, hours early, this 5th anniversary of the second attempt at the world's longest divorce. At the diner, folks hover over coffee and hash browns, savor time as it comes. In my absence, the trees turned back to shrubs behind our old rental, while winter salt shrunk the houses down a couple sizes. Rain faded the neighbor's brass awning to turquoise, just as he'd surely hoped. And across the street, cedar shakes loosen in a wide grin on the porch. The wood pile out back is lower now. Around the block, over the railroad tracks, where we took that selfie looking into each other's eyes, both trying not to laugh, I turn right on the first road that leads to a hidden path to the park, a dead end. It's mediation day, and I've all but forgotten the 2 blocks from Hope Street to home. Past downtown, the same chiropractors still on hold with the same insurance when I stop in to buy vitamins, a few bucks a bottle more now. Soap smells the same in the bathroom where I did blood work and vaginal swabs for 5 home births. You'll get half of whatever is left of my $370 life after legal fees. Snow is predicted by evening. Tears are on the brink. We've paid retainers for 4 hours, scheduled 6 to be on the safe side. 3 lawyers next door chatter behind closed doors to decide our fate. You sit across, frown into your phone. Nothing changed in a decade. Yet another table, lawyer, phone, window. This silence still hurts, still costs everything more than I have. My new to me tires, ready to drive all night when this is over. Back to Granny and Grandpa, 2 dogs, a cat, and all the kids. Our midwife agrees to be our emergency contact in case something happens to any of us. After we sign and forget to give back your name I'd borrowed, I'll roll home along the river, watch trees grow tall and snow return to the ground. Remember that unlike up north, in the land of milk, honey, and progress, where I tore out my guts to find refuge from you, here, time reverses heart attacks, but songs sung on tire swings last forever. I'm visiting my friend whose cat seems to like me. I'd like to share a poem called When the Revolution. When the revolution comes to St. Paul, I want to be on the side of a child from Saigon who remembers to hide under the platform bed, feeding jasmine rice to toy soldiers as bombs fall. I want to be on the side of a Peruvian weaver who kept accounts of vicuña wool shawls when Sendero Luminoso exploded a bus in Miraflores. Beside a baker of tres leches cakes and pan dulce, who raised pork on the roof of a cinder block house, maker of tortas with avocados, mayonnaise, eggs, and beans. With the chicken farmer from the highlands of Guatemala who, in civil war, hid the night beneath the belly of a pickup, picked shrapnel from his thigh as morning dawned in El Monte. When the revolution comes to St. Paul, Minnesota, wrapped in tortillas, in banh mi, fear, pupusas, worry, injera, hunger, and tamales. When it all falls in, I want to be with you. I'd like to close with a bilingual poem in English and Spanish, and this is an ode to tea. Oda al té. Tacita de té. Soplo de aire sabroso. Hueles a canela y a durazno. Ode to tea. Cup of tea, breath of delicious air. You smell like peaches and cinnamon. Eres el amor puro del corazón de la casa, silbando tu melodía de tetera. Tómame. You're the pure love of the home's heart, whistling your call. Drink me in. Se detiene el reloj en tu presencia. Los contratiempos se destejen. The clock stops in your presence. Misfortunes are unwoven. Al escuchar el silencio de la madrugada se derrite el estrés mientras te preparo. Listening to dawn's silence, stress melts as I prepare you. Me llamas cuando estás lista y voy a verte. No puedo beberte sin primero apreciarte. You call to me when it's time for me to come to you. I can't consume you without expressing gratitude. Adoro tu esencia de velas e incienso. Te abrazo con las manos. I adore your essence of candles and incense. I embrace you with my hands. En una mañana de invierno me despiertas con jazmín y con bergamota me enredas en tu vapor. On a cold winter morning, you awaken me with jasmine. With bergamot, you enfold me in your steam. Me acompaña tu calor vivo en estado líquido, como la encarnación de la esperanza. Your liquid living warmth accompanies me, like the incarnation of hope. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. That last poem, it's real nice to see the joy in expressing the words and hear the beauty of the Spanish language. I appreciate that. Our last poet tonight is David Wright. David's work has appeared in 32 poems: Imagine, Ecotone, Poetry East, Hobart, Verse Daily, Books and Culture, Southwesterner, Temora Literary Review, and the Academy of American Poets, among others, including textbooks such as The Ekpastic Writer, and anthologies as A Capella, Mennonite Voices in Poetry, and In a Fine Frenzy, Poets Respond to Shakespeare. He has published 3 full-length poetry collections, including Local Talent. He teaches creative writing and American literature at Monmouth College in Illinois and can be found on Twitter at Sweater Vest Boy. Take it away, David.
Thank you, Ron, so much for that introduction, for the poems you read, as well as to the other poets here. It's really great to work with you and Valerie for handling all the text so that we are able to see one another. There's not a lot of things I loved about the quarantine time, of of uh, of the pandemic. But this I loved, the ability to be in the presence of other poets that you wouldn't normally see. I'm the only one right now, I think, in Central Illinois. Sarah sounds like she's in exile in Indiana, perhaps a little bit. And to read with other poets, I keep sitting here wanting to reshuffle what I'm going to read because it feels like a conversation, a really rich poetic conversation. So we'll see if I do that. And Ron, give me the high sign if I manage to go on a minute or too long. Hard to not want to do the conversation here. The love poem that you read, Sarah, made me want to read this one. It's from a book of poems I'm working on called Consolations and Litanies for the Early Years of the Pandemic. I wrote some of those with Ron at the Tupelo 3030 that we did a year and a half or so ago. This is Consolation 7, Ode to a Pandemic Walk. Dance down from a maple above 9th Street. What creature spins in chrysalis, thread invisible? What creature begins itself indivisible like memory into before, after? Like and remember me, love, ever after, lover with ripe berries from the U-pick. I'll hover above you or fall, you pick beside your thighs, the curved creek between banks. Besides, I like the curve of your cheeks. Thank you for our hips, matched arches and aches. Here are my lips, I am no catch. March aches into June, then August without a cure. Out of tune, let's chant, we will never be pure. Dance, drown, set tables, devour all sweets. A poem from a group of poems called Program Notes for the Atonement that responds to a piece by Max Bruch, the Kol Nidra. So a set of sonnets. This poem is When the Eye and the Ear and the Voice, and the title leads in as the first line. When the eye and the ear and the voice have been exhausted by the constant screens, click screens, scroll, news feeds of worry, noises thudding through the sternum, nothing unseen. When wounded eyes, stuffed ears, ranted voices appear with particular static in dreams that once held the beloved and her choice word, his scarred cheek, breaking news, no serene sight, no song, no throated pleasure to voice from a man's hands, 3 wordless chords descend. A woman draws with a bow a sharp light from autumn's intimate dusk. Breathe. Repent. Unclench your fist, supplicant. When the eye, the ear, the voice disappear, then atone at one. Now silence. Then again a voice to begin. I'm going to read one or two from a local talent. I wasn't going to read this one, but someone talked about small towns in the Middle West, and I am definitely in a small town in the Middle West. Monmouth, Illinois has about 9,000 people. And if you count the students, about 9,700 people at the college where I teach. So this is a poem called Before the Lightning Storm. 2 lost boys knock at my door. Holding a hand-drawn map, railroad tracks, a water tower, a scribble that could be a house or a face. I'm from Iowa and we're lost, says the slim 15-year-old trying to palm a football. No phone. I get one next year. His sweet fat cousin is local and younger and not afraid and does not know his address or phone number. He mumbles his name. He says he can cross the tracks and can walk to a dollar store from home. We live, says the second grader between sips from a plastic cup next to the tower. I have not lived here long enough to know we have 3 water towers in town, 2 Family Dollars. It's just past dusk and the skies have turned green, a storm watch. Echoes from my phone as I drive by the boys' house, as I drive the boys home. You'll know, I ask, when we get near. That light over there, says the teenager, the one by that garage. The younger one jumps from the car almost before I stop. His cousin shakes my hand and yells, look both ways at the tracks. I look both ways, then up to where lightning shimmers in rhythm to the alerts from my alarm, backlighting the giant white basin hoisted in the air on steel legs, declaring the name of our home. Behind me on a shelf here is one of the heads I keep in my living room, two of them actually. There's this here by my friend Janice Wunderlich, a wonderful artist. And there's this one here by a colleague of mine, also an artist, Brian Baugh. And here's a little ekphrastic poem for Brian's sculpture and also a painting his wife Stephanie had in a gallery. This is Untitled Half Head of a Man in a Gallery Before a Field of Green. Oh, uneyed mask of the face, unbrained mind, and the veined blue clay that is skin, and the plain smooth green and gray canvas relief for the dark track of line, curve so sure, seeming so. We live in the shadow of a painted arc, in the dark space between unopened lips, the silent work speaking the head that may or may not need a name. I'll read two more poems, if you're okay with that. Oh, there it is. I marked this one with a lottery ticket that didn't win. Poetry won't make you rich, but you could write a poem on the back of a lottery ticket, I suppose, and save your damn life. This is a poem called "O Dead Man of Goodwill," and it was, I was moved to it by being in the Goodwill in Champaign-Urbana, Illinois, where I lived for a while, and getting some really good finds. And at some point I realized I was buying a bunch of clothing that all smelled the same, had the same cologne. And I figured out I was buying a dead guy's clothes. So this is "O Dead Man of Goodwill." Your coat smells of cinnamon and your ties were all silk. I am your shoulders and your pockets are mine. I bought also a scallop-edged green goblet that may have been in your mouth. At the store, I left your felt gray hat, but still felt your wife's delicate ghost hand in this glove I found. My hands are quite small, tucked into the sleeve of our coat, which I wear in the 12-degree cold to walk and hear the choir, whoever are earth-born together, rich and poor. The candles and chalice, the incense fails to cover over the residual lives I've put on and cannot shed. Old coat, your perfumes, and the seasons of our hands. All right, I'm gonna finish up with another one of these litanies and consolations. And this one is, I guess, kind of especially weird. You write enough poems about wearing masks and whatnot, and you end up having to invent some different kinds of masks. This one is Mask Litany for Today I Wear My Kafka Mask. And it starts with a quotation from a letter that Kafka wrote to Max Brod. I usually solve my problems by letting them devour me, says Kafka. Mumbling in the dialects of Midwestern cockroaches, a set of unintelligible and detailed instructions to the spiders on my porch, orb weaver, wolf spider, and her numberless young about how to avoid, sorry, my poem just disappeared off my screen. I'm sorry about that. May I start that again, Ron? Do I have time to start that again? Thank you. Mumbling in the dialects of Midwestern cockroaches, a set of unintelligible and detailed instructions to the spiders on my porch, orb weaver, wolf spider, and her numberless young about how to avoid the pair of hungry, horned-up doves who have run out of birdseed and patience. I am at once a scuttler and a translator. I am a knife and another knife. My life wakes me to the morning and nearly kills me every day. Come to me, love, and be the quiet heart and the confusing heart, spontaneous heart, my little pinchers plugged into the pulse ox. So say So both of our hearts beat too fast and I'm stealing all the oxygen. When I pull down the mask so you can read my lips, you cannot read my lips. I have no lips. They have transformed into terrible mandibles. I have not seen for myself, but feel powerful. You show them to me on your phone. When I see my own face, my segmented self, I feel crushed. How long have you been taking the pills, you ask? How long have you been flushing them down your thorax with rainwater? How long have you known that you were hiding such a charming face behind such a ravenous face? I need to answer you, but I cannot find the syllables or hisses to say sorry. I need to answer you, but I am so gorged now, I can barely skitter or hop. I have been devoured by my own considerable troubles and charms. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Thank you, everybody, for listening. That concludes our poets. Give them all a hand, even though they won't be able to hear you. Thanks, everybody, for reading. Thanks, Valerie and the Minneapolis Television Network for handling the technical aspects of the program and getting us on. Hopefully around December will be the next reading. Have a great night, everybody.